Steven went from Secret Society Illuminati to blame the furries real quick.
No, I did not.
God.
Why do you guys
I'm
keep
looking at you.
You're perpetuating this thing that I don't like furries. I fucking love furries.
Chaos Included TV has no problem with the furry community. In fact, we love you guys. Back to another episode of Chaotic Underground. I'm one of your hosts, Z Diggity. Joined with me is Ryan Damask. Hello.
Hey.
Stephen Bonsai.
Hello.
And we have a new guest with us who is our all things expert concerning our topic today, Cryptids, a.k.a. Other Zach, or Better Zach. How you doing, man?
Oh, I'm doing all right. You know, just getting deep into that cryptid lore for everybody.
Well, we appreciate you coming on and helping us. So what's going to happen is we were going to do a Mothman episode, and I had it all researched, but then Crip said we all forgot that he was a residential Mothman expert and was like, why don't we get an expert to do it? And then, so yeah, the pressure's on now, man. I just hyped you up. So
PhD in Mothman.
PhD in Mothman. Please do not correct him. Everything he says is right.
That's right, Better Cheddar. Tell me about Mothman.
I love how I said at the beginning of the episode, like before recording, we will not set you up for failure. And we're totally...
Everything you say must be right. If I see one comment that says you're wrong about something, never having you on the show again.
We're watching. I need you to know.
All right, man, you got this.
All right.
All right. But anyway, you guys have heard me talk enough. Why don't we hand the episode over to Cryptids, and we'll be your ever attentive listeners on this topic.
And I'm sure we will never get off track.
No.
All right, we're gonna leave. You got this. You have a good night.
All right, solo venture now. Let's go.
All right. Take it away.
So, the origins of Mothman are very weird, knowing what Mothman has become now, because we're going to go back to the time of Stephen's childhood, November 15th, 1966.
That's a fan of the show right there, if I've ever seen one.
We're going to go to Point Pleasant, West Virginia. It's like, I don't remember if they actually reported a time for this article, but it's sometime in the night. There are two couples just driving along near a wildlife management area that's called the TNT area by locals, and its official name is the Clifton F. McClintock Wildlife Management Area.
How did they get TNT from that? How did they get TNT from that? So
that is actually something I learned. It used to be a factory. There was a quarry there where they would make TNT. Mm-hmm. And there was still ordnance left there during the time all of this is happening. So I want you to keep that fact in mind as we go down the line.
The most dangerous makeout spot.
Exactly.
Hey, it makes it more exciting.
So these two couples, Roger and Linda Scarberry and Steve and Mary Millette, they don't actually say what they're doing. It's probably like makeout point. They're all in the same car. Apparently it was cool to just make out with other people around back then.
Okay.
Oh yeah, Stephen, tell me all about it. I'm sure
absolutely
you experienced much of it.
You couldn't talk about how good you were at something without an audience, so you had to have an audience. I would know.
Honey, I brought Mary and Steve with us because Steve's insisting I'm not a good kisser, and I need you to show him otherwise.
That's right. Let me show you how it's done.
Like they're the couple that's just there all the time, but the other couple doesn't want them there, you know. But they're too nice to tell them that they're too tired to bring them along, you know.
I love that this is the era before PowerPoint presentations, so I could have presented it in an official, professional manner using slides, but I actually had to have them there, and I was like, okay, make sure you get the angle right, because when you're going in, it's got to be like this.
You know what? Forget Mothman. Let's focus on this.
Let's talk about phenomenon. Let's talk about this weird couple, this double date action that's going on. Anyway, Mothman.
Okay, so 1966, November 15th. So we're in West Virginia, so we're probably kind of cold at this point. I I don't know. I don't know anything about West
Our
Virginia.
nipples are pointy.
Yeah.
I get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. This couple's doing their thing, getting down to business or something, and standing just off behind the road is this large looming figure. And before I get to the actual description, I want you to, for a second, conjure in your mind what you think Mothman is supposed to look like. Because odds are you're thinking something along the lines of this, where he is a black figure with glowing red eyes. Yeah?
Yeah.
That's what I kind of always, at least when I was doing my research before you came on, like that's what popped up at least a lot.
Yeah. So Linda, I could not find the article that this is quoted from, unfortunately, but she described the creature as a 7-foot tall, slender, muscular man with white wings. He was described as predominantly white in color.
Okay.
Oh,
Which is so weird that somehow we got to this.
Were the glowing red eyes in that initial description?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh man, this is guys. I've got the mystery solved. This was just me in my fursuit back in the day. Like these people were freaking out. I was just watching. All right.
Suspiciously wealthy.
I was just walking
Suspiciously
along in the
wealthy
woods
furry.
in my furry suit, and I saw the weirdest thing: 2 couples in a car making out.
You mean to tell me like you never like as a teenager like went on a double date and then like you awkwardly were making out next to each other? That's never happened to you ever?
No.
Guys?
Weird.
Really?
Only 3 times.
Well, Utah's weird.
She's noticed this man-shaped thing with glowing red eyes. But she can't, like, tell what its face looks like because its eyes are basically hypnotizing her.
Okay.
Which, there's more to that later down the line because I'm going to tell this like John Keel did and be completely unnecessarily out of order for certain details.
Yeah.
So after they finally manage to break this hypnotic trance that they're going into, they drive off at like 100 miles per hour back to Point Pleasant. And this thing is keeping up with them. It is screeching like hell and following this car like it is no problem. And
Like flying, right?
Yeah, it's like taking off, flying after them, and it is going fast as hell. They get to the city limits, and it leaves. Then they go back, according to the news article, and it's there again. And it happens again. So they come back. And then the news article goes on to ask Roger and Linda, are you going to go back and look for it again? And they both said yes. It's like, were you so bored in West Virginia that the only thing to do was go and possibly be murdered by something you have no idea what is?
I mean,
So
have you ever been to the Midwest?
No, that's on the East Coast, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it
So
the
I
East
thought
Coast?
I
I don't
read
know
an-
states.
West
I thought I read an
Virginia.
article that the creature finally like got in front of the car and tried to lay down in the road, and they were like, we're not getting out to check on that thing. And then they went back. Then they went and got the sheriff and came back, and it was just a pile of dust where it was laying.
Okay, I did
And I
not come
could-
across that article.
No,
but
I
that
know.
is
I
certainly
saw.
possible.
I saw like 3 different versions of the
Mhm.
story, so it's definitely like it's obviously probably been elaborated on a little bit or embellished on a little bit.
The good news is I can address why we probably saw different articles. Because the following day, November 16th, I can remember what day I was just talking about. There was a article written in the Point Pleasant Register. I don't know why I said it wrong. That was titled "Couples See Man-Sized Bird ... Creature ... Something ... because concise article titles were just all the rage in 1966.
It was a different time.
Which, also weird fact, is on the bottom of this shirt, and I didn't know that until I started researching. For
What?
this.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
But for the next 15 days, there is at least one article published about Mothman in the local area. 15 straight days where this town cannot escape hearing about this creature. And I looked at those article names, and some of them were terrible. Like, we've got, could the Mothman be a balloon?
Could the Mothman be a balloon?
Are you asking Chat GPT right now?
No. No, I was Googling it. But so on that note, do you feel like anytime that anything paranormal that normal happens, everybody immediately defaults to balloon?
It's weird, right? It's like, oh, it's a UFO. It's just a weather balloon.
It's a balloon. What? Oh, I saw Chupacabra. Balloon.
Flatwoods monster? Balloon.
Balloon. Nephilim? Balloon.
I love to imagine a disgruntled balloon animal artist who lost his job, and he's just going around fucking with everyone on the planet, like Chupacabra. Like, it's a balloon.
Like those killer clowns that were around for a while.
Oh yeah,
it's just all the balloon animal creators across the country.
Guys, I have a great plan. I want you to know we're all gonna make these creepy things out of balloons, and no one will know if they're real or if they're really balloons. But they're both. They're fucking both.
You're gonna make that video, Steven.
So didn't the Register article like encourage other people to come talk about it?
I believe it did.
Mm-hmm.
And if that is true, which I didn't actually get to read that article, it was one of the only ones not actually linked where I was looking.
Yeah.
It got a lot of people in trouble because just going back a second, there was one other article I wanted to mention the headline of. It was just so nonchalant. I was like, are you serious? Oh, comma, that bird was seen again. And I was just like, you have like 100 people having reported seeing this thing. None of them are like, yes, it's a bird.
I just imagine J. Jonah Jameson's like, oh, there's that damn Spider-Man again.
Yeah, that's the head editor of the Point Pleasant Register. Damn it, I want pictures of Mothman.
Good Lord. So the initial sightings did happen. And then did they continue to happen like after all these articles started coming out?
So from what I read, while the articles mostly stopped after the 15 days, there were sightings reported for the next 13 months of just people seeing things for some reason. And one of the weirder sightings that's reported is a guy who claims his name was Newell Partridge. And I was like, I've heard of people with two first names. This man has two last names. It is very strange.
Yeah, absolutely.
He claims that that he saw the creature about 90 minutes before the initial sighting was alleged to have taken place.
Okay.
He was like, no, dude, I was the first person. Nobody else can get credit for this. This is my shtick. This thing fucked with my TV. It made it sound like a generator, and it made my dog all angry. And I just can't, man. And then that dog, it disappeared. He saw the creature in the meadow by his house. Dog went after it, and he never saw the dog again. Just bye.
Now, so what interests me is like it affected his TV and everything.
Yeah.
And I feel like most people's like experience with Mothman, especially if they haven't been like everybody kind of pop culturally knows. For me, I first heard of Mothman from the 2002's winter blockbuster Mothman Prophecy starring Richard Gere. And
isn't Laura Linney in that?
Yes.
And Laura Linney, yeah. And so in that movie, they portray him having all these supernatural powers. And initially, it's like I feel like the first sighting was moth fly over. They're being chased by giant Mothman, and now I feel like it's flowering into, as all these stories do, flowers into like it has superpowers. It got laser vision. It turned into a bat, And
so it's funny that you mentioned laser vision because we're gonna get to that.
Get the fuck.
I wish I was joking.
Okay.
So,
all right, I'm in.
So before we get to laser vision, I want to point out. So the sheriff is publicly quoted on what he thinks the creature is, and he says, it's just a large hair and a shite poke. And So I was like, I don't know what that is. I'm going to look into that. It's a bird called a shag, which is the smallest heron in the Western Hemisphere. The heaviest ones are 12 pounds.
Okay.
This thing was described as 7 feet tall. That thing would be floating because it would be lighter than air.
Yeah.
Ah.
Sorry,
do you know
I'm
if anybody,
processing
do you know
what
if
you're
anybody
saying.
ever claimed to see it in the day, or was it always at night?
Yes, actually. That's where our next story actually takes place. We're going to skip past something and I'll talk about it later. Because I just want to keep it as chronological to the timeline as possible, because the books didn't, and I hated that. We're going to look at the incident of Connie Carpenter, which took place on November 26th. She's this shy, conservative 18-year-old girl. She's coming home from church, and she is driving just on the way. And she passes by the local golf course. So she looks over at it. It looks normal. It's a deserted golf course in the middle of November, or end of November. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
She looks back at the road, and there's a figure in the road. And she's already like, what the hell is this? And she starts to slow down. She's like, I don't know how I didn't crash. And she also follows the description. It's like a man, but larger. 7 feet tall, so that same height again. And very broad. But the one thing she couldn't stop focusing on were its eyes. I quoted her here. It had large, round, fiercely glowing red eyes that focused on her with hypnotic effect.
Okay.
So,
How long? Not to interrupt, but how long after did this sighting happen? After the initial sighting?
this is, if I've got the year right here, it's about a year. But I think I'm wrong on that one, and I think it's about 11 days after the first sighting.
I told you you're not allowed to be wrong.
Oof. Alrighty.
I'll show
Ejected
myself
from the
out.
podcast.
Ejected. This podcast. We're doing another yokai episode. Let's go.
Buttholes galore.
All right, Steven, hit us with a yokai.
Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to derail us. But
All good. So as she's staring at this thing, just transfixed by its hypnotic eyes, 2 wings unfold from its back that are 10 feet long, and it just floats straight up. These wings never beat, but it just slowly, quietly starts floating straight into the air.
Yeah, that's what I read too. Like, none of the sightings ever talk about the wings flapping.
Yeah,
It's
it's
just
like
like-
a glider as opposed to a
Yeah.
bird, which is
This-
super
thi-
spooky.
This seems like some Scooby-Doo shit.
I know,
Some-
right?
Somebody
He's got
is-
like cables running through the
somebody's
trees.
got a rope over a tree the other way. They're just like pulling them up, and
Yeah.
Christian McChristieson, is sitting there like shocked to death to the point where she probably starts to believe in premarital sex, and and that's the take you get. She's like, man, I was thinking I'd wait till marriage, but now that I've seen this 10-foot wingspan and this scary hypnotizing red eyes, I think I'm gonna need to go explore my sexuality.
What are you talking about?
what the fuck is wrong with you, Steven? Jesus
According to
Christ,
Steven,
man!
If I'm to summarize Steven, Connie Carpenter experienced her first sexual awakening at the sighting of Mothman.
I'm
Like
just
many
making up
women
a
in
story to
Point
go with
Pleasant.
it.
God damn it!
Look, that story makes about as much sense as
Why
this
is that going to
entire
make such a
creature.
good short?
This is how Steven knows so much about it. He was the guy with the wires.
I told you that was my first suit.
He's like, hurry, hurry! I think she's coming. We got to make her awaken her sexuality. Pull.
All right. So, God damn it! So this thing has super.
This thing
So this-
levitates, and it has laser eyes. Because it turns out, after this, Connie developed what was known as Klieg conjunctivitis, and one of those words may sound familiar to you, because conjunctivitis is the name for pink eye. It is the swelling of your eyelid area.
Wait, so it gives you pink eye too? Wait,
Essentially,
okay.
but no. So
Don't think it was
here's
that.
where we get into one of the weird theories where we're going to claim Mothman is an alien.
Okay, so you mean to tell me that? Okay, Mothman's an alien. Okay,
Yes.
okay. So basically, Mothman shows up, levitates without flapping his wings, farts in their face, and then flies away.
Yeah, those big red eyes, not actually eyes. It's just sphincters where
Oh
it
my
shoots out
God.
fart gas at you.
We're carving our own corner in the internet over here.
Absolutely, we are absolutely butchering this urban legend to death, and it makes about as much sense as the real Mothman. If I'm being
It
completely
totally
honest,
does.
All right.
I'm a huge skeptic. Like, I know you're a huge
You should
fan of it, but like the problem is I spent
it makes zero sense how Mothman
I
could
spent
exist.
time around airplanes and things like that, and like you learn a lot about like acceleration and how things fly, and every like testimony makes no sense for how
Absolutely not.
a creature, even with wings that are beating at 10 feet, like the
Proportions are
propulsion,
wrong.
yeah, the propulsion required to go almost 100 miles an hour to chase after a car.
Yeah.
Like, you would need way more than that, and it
you
sounds
also
so
wouldn't be
illogical.
7
Or-
feet tall.
Or divine power.
Or,
Yes.
or to segue us back, Mothman's an alien.
Yes. So, the reason that theory exists, at least for part of it, is so flea conjunctivitis is also known as eye burn. It is caused when you get a bunch of UV rays in your eyes without protection. So you can do this by going to the beach and just staring at the sun if you really want to. Don't. I'm not endorsing that. Neither is this
Look,
podcast. That's on me.
I just need Ryan to cut in the gif of
My
Patrick's
eyes.
eyes burning from SpongeBob.
Yes. That would be so
Oh.
good.
I think I'm editing this episode.
Ooh.
Oh, Z, get it in there, baby.
Yeah, Ryan's already
So-
done a 4-person episode. It's my turn.
So he's an alien because apparently this is something that is known to happen with UFOs. They just like shoot UV rays out and blind people.
Really?
So that's where the first theory that they think that he's an alien
Yeah.
comes from. The fact that he
He
blinds
causes
people
what
with UV
people
rays.
call UFO blindness in the ufology circles.
Conveniently, it hurts their eyesight, so they can't get a clear look at it.
Mhm.
Right? Yeah. Okay.
What's weird about it is when I started reading this part of the story in the Mothman Prophecies, it then jumps forward like 8 years and is like, now I'm going to tell you about this story in 1973 where this man's glasses melted to his face and he lost the lens out of them. And I was just like, that's really cool, but completely unrelated to Mothman. And we're in chapter 2.
And that's from the book.
Yeah, that is in the book. He's telling a story about a guy who saw a UFO and it just fucked him up so bad.
Oh, Lord.
So
And I got so confused because it's the middle of the story. He puts that in and then just goes back to the story. Like there's nothing weird about what he just said.
So I'm curious about this because we've run into this sort of thing with like the Men in Black, where the stories like an author that wrote about a specific occurrence of paranormal or alien exposure was well known to write stories in science fiction. Like they submitted stories to science fiction magazines. There's literally documented history of this. Is this kind of a similar thing going on here, or is there any details about that?
So I would wager that it is very much likely that a lot of the stuff in the Mothman Prophecies is fictionalized because that is not John Keel's only book. He did have fiction stories published before this. He had stories about stuff in Egypt and aliens. He was just known as a ufologist because that's totally a real job.
Right.
So he was already well known in those circles at this point. So there's a very good chance that he was making up a lot of his stories to keep his fame. Also, he's dead, so I don't think he can sue me. But if his family's listening, please don't sue me.
Oh, it's okay. They're not going to sue you. Maybe.
So in a lot of his books, from what I understand, he talks about how like all kinds of paranormal things throughout history are attributed to aliens, whether it's like vampires or ghosts or demons or anything. Like
And then it sounds like at some point later, he started attributing even aliens to psychic phenomena. And I was just like,
Huh.
what does that... Are aliens tulpas? Is that what you're trying to say? Like,
Back to tulpas.
Yeah.
Back to tulpas.
Always back to tulpas.
Uh-huh.
which, if you want information on that, go back a few episodes, find their episode on that, because it does a way better job explaining than I could do in the like 3 minutes that I would do on it.
No, not really. But you can watch that episode right here.
It's got a My Little Pony thumbnail. That's right, baby.
I forgot about the My Little Pony section of that episode.
Oh yeah, it's a whole experience.
Because
So-
I was working when I listened to that, and I'm so happy the store was empty because I'm walking to the back and I just start laughing.
Good lord. Was that your first episode? That was your first episode, Stephen. On
Yeah, that was my
on the
first
podcast.
one.
Yeah. Wow.
Look how far you've come.
So a big thing in the research that I found, Crip said, is after the sightings happened, maybe a year or so later. Again, you might have a more precise date on this. There's that big event that happened.
Yes.
I think you know which one I'm talking about.
I do.
The bridge collapse.
Yes.
And a lot of people seem to point that towards Mothman.
So-
or allegedly it's his fault.
What's
or their
interesting
fault.
about this is, so Mothman was first sighted on November 15th, 1966 in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. The Silver Bridge collapsed December 15th, 1967. Exactly 13 months after the first sighting.
And is it that because 13 months relevant because it's the bad luck number? Or
I don't know how. I just think it's really cool coincidence that it ended up on the 15th as well. But the reason we take this to paranormal as opposed to just weird coincidence is that was the last day a sighting was reported in Point Pleasant.
Really?
After that bridge collapsed, the sighting stopped.
Okay, like forever, like never.
I don't
again?
think so, because I've recently found that somebody in like 2016 took a photo and it's attributed to Point Pleasant of what could be Mothman or could be a hawk holding a snake, which is super badass. But
Yeah, it is super badass. So
Yeah.
so we're rounding out Point Pleasant, and it's clearly tourist attracting stories with riveting headlines about
Mhm.
Mothman. So where do we move from there? Like clearly a bridge has fallen. People are
Mhm.
like, it was some Mothman. He's come out of his chrysalis and knocked down a bridge.
I don't think that's the case though. A lot of people and sorry Zach, you're probably gonna go into this, but it's more like he was coming to warn
Mhm.
that the bridge was gonna collapse. Not that he's the one who collapsed. There's pockets that
Yes.
believe that he caused his problems, but mostly that he's warning.
Mhm. There's people who think
Really?
he's an omen of disaster, and other people who think he's like Absol from Pokemon, and that if he goes somewhere, shit just goes wrong. That incident is what caused that connotation, because just after he stops being seen, and he was allegedly seen that day around the bridge beforehand, as well as a few days prior. And what it turns out is that bridge had like a 0.1 inch defect in a single bar that caused it to collapse and kill 46 people that day, which is way too many for any incident. It was at the time the greatest loss of life due to a bridge collapse in the US.
Yeah.
And 2 of the victims were never recovered. So I'm sorry to those families that it didn't even get the closure.
So, no, go ahead. Go ahead and
Okay.
finish your thought. Go ahead
So-
and finish your thought.
What makes this even more paranormally weird is that about a month before the collapse happened, an important character in this story, Mrs. Mary Heyer, she starts having nightmares about people drowning in the river with Christmas presents floating in the water. And she was friends with John Keel, the author of the book, at this point.
Uh-huh.
So she starts talking to him, and he comes down by Thanksgiving, which I think was like a week later, And now a lot of people in town are having nightmares about people drowning and people in the water, and that some disaster is going to happen.
Were these alleged supposed nightmares that people were experiencing? Were they reporting these before the accident happened, or did they come forward after the accident happened?
So, if John Keel is to be believed, they started being the first report was 1 month prior to the event happening. That was when Mrs. Heyer contacted him specifically, and then he came down because he's a psychic investigator dude, so he's gonna do that. And at that point, it sounds like it had become a phenomenon for multiple people in the town to be dreaming of this.
Okay, I mean, obviously, I'm asking those questions because
we're all skeptics. I'd like to believe in Mothman because it's funny.
Exactly.
But
yeah,
he's so completely improbable that it's absolutely like a bird or something, or just hoaxes. But I love the concept of a 7 foot tall flying man. It is just silly.
One thing that I love about it too is that the town itself really, based on my research, really just kind of leaned into it now.
Mm-hmm.
And now, have you been to because they have a museum there now?
I have not in real life. What's cool is they made that museum in Fallout 76, and I went there in Fallout 76.
What?
Because Fallout 76 takes place in West Virginia, and one of the towns you can visit is Point Pleasant.
You said you've been to the museum before we recorded the podcast. You didn't say it was in Fallout 76.
That would be the greatest swerve of all time, is that I just lied to you and was like, yeah, I've been there.
Man, I've been to Okinawa via Google Maps for sure.
Absolutely. Dude, I've totally been to Tokyo if you count all the anime I've watched.
So Bonsai lives in Tokyo based off of the anime he watched.
It's true. Yeah. I lost most of my hair there.
Every day, Bonsai is running through the street with toast in his mouth. It's just a fact.
And a harem behind him.
Shut up, Baka. So I gotta ask. So you're a huge fan of this,
yes?
Like, and we're gonna get more into the history, but like, so what was it? Just how farcical it is that you became even more kind of interested in it, or was it you actually kind of were chasing down the idea of cryptids? Like, I'm genuinely curious. Do you believe in other cryptids, or are you just like, do you find them interesting?
I really
as a person?
love cryptids. It's actually why my name is Cryptzed. It's to be the pun on cryptid, and I'm Canadian, so I say Z instead of Z. Ooh. But what it initially started as a joke of, we were talking about cryptids one day, and I was like, oh fuck yeah, Mothman, that's definitely the best one. And I've like gaslit myself into loving him, just like playing up to the joke that I've always loved Mothman, and now it's like I just unironically have chosen Mothman as my spirit cryptid.
Hey, that's awesome. I imagine you want to dress up in 10-foot wings and
that would
fly
be
around
so fun.
And harass couples making out with an audience. You know?
Exactly. That's my goal now. I'm going to be the new Mothman. We're going to stay in Point Pleasant for one last experience.
Okay.
It is not an encounter with the Mothman, but it's going to tie back again to another previous episode where, if you recall, Mrs. Mary Heyer, she was the office manager and a reporter for the Athens Messenger, another newspaper based in Point Pleasant, and she was visited by the Men in Black.
Oh, Men in Black, like our Men in Black episode? You can catch that right here.
In fact, I actually want you to go and watch that episode first so you can get context on how weird this appearance specifically is. Because while in that episode, most of the descriptions of the Men in Black were pale men. They were generally like tall, if I recall correctly, like unusually proportioned. So Miss Mary Heyer it's 1 week after the bridge collapse. She's in her office going over the list of the missing and the deceased, trying to figure out if she's got everyone for her story, when two men walk in dressed in black. And this is nothing new to her, Because at this point, everyone from people from New York and onwards have been coming to find out what happened at the bridge collapse. But these men don't ask about the bridge. They instead ask her, I hear there's been a lot of UFO sightings in the area. And that catches her off guard because nobody's been talking about that for the past week. In fact, for a long time, the past year, it's all been about Mothman and this creature that people have been seeing.
Okay.
So she says, yeah, there have been a lot of sightings in the area. And she reaches into her desk and pulls out a bulging folder full of articles and clippings from local newspapers and gives it over to one of the men. The man opens it up and he just scans it and then gives it back to her and asks,
Wait, what does he scan? Like scans it with his eyes,
yeah,
or does he?
He just basically, like, if I had a book and I just went, yes, interesting.
Okay,
Anyway,
I thought you said he pulled out a device and he scanned it with
that would
or
be
something like that. My bad.
super cool, but it's 1967, and at this point, a phone is amazing technology.
That's why I was curious.
Stephen can attest. He was there. He was like,
yeah, absolutely. Bulging file is how we would both start a office inquiry and a pornographic movie.
Exactly. So he's looked at this folder.
I see you over there, Ryan.
He basically does not care about the folder at all. It is just a pretense. He asks her, has anyone ever told you to stop reporting these sightings? And she says, no one has. And he hands the folder back to her, and she goes to put it back. And he asks her, what would you do if someone did tell you to stop? She says, I'd tell them to go to hell. This one, no, weirdly. She looks back down at the list she was working on, and then looks back up, and the men are gone. There's no one in this office anymore with her. But the unusual thing about these men is they were short and dark complexioned Asian men, which is nothing like any of the other Men in Black reportings we've heard of.
It's the Japan district. So.
It's ninjas. They're fucking ninjas. That's what they are. Like, just let me say it. They're ninjas.
They're not ninjas, Steven. Come on, man.
They are ninjas.
Are they ninjas? Why are they ninjas? I would love to hear
Because
this.
ninjas train Batman, and that's what he fucking does. I'm just saying.
I was really thinking this is going to be because they were Asian, obviously.
No, what the fuck? You can have American ninjas. Haven't you watched
American
the show?
Ninja Warrior, guys?
Absolutely.
I've seen Beverly Hills Ninja, starring Chris Farley.
Three
1997.
ninjas.
There are
Three
so
ninjas
many
knuckle
examples.
up. Let's go.
It's Jesus. Surf ninjas.
Three
baby.
ninjas kick
let's
back.
be real.
Yep. Iron Fist.
Ryan is just having an experience by himself over there in the corner.
Marvel reference.
Ryan's just sitting in the corner.
I got so lost.
Did we lose the?
About 10 minutes ago.
No, we did not.
No, I'm just holding very still.
I'm very impressed. That is some performance art level,
dude.
Okay.
Yeah. It's yeah. The nervous. It's me holding my ticks at bay.
So
these men have disappeared. Like, that's already weird. Later that same day, a new stranger enters her office. This is a 5'7" man. He is a darker complexioned Asian man with a cheap, ill-fitting suit. And he's got like unkempt hair that looks like he had just had a brush cut and it's like growing back, so it's awful. He's at the point where his hair is neither long enough to be nice, like Steven's, obviously, or disappearing enough like Ryan's. I'm sorry, that was mean.
Damn.
I felt like I had to.
I'm being quiet over here.
It isn't just me today.
I had to throw something your way. I'll get Z later. Don't worry.
I'm an easy target. It's pretty easy.
And he's a little more odd looking because his hands apparently are just unreasonably long for this 5'7" man. He's got like yaoi paddle hands that taper.
What is this fucking reference? No.
Listen,
you don't get away with that. I'm not just going to ignore that shit. That is a reference from the 90s, and you cannot pretend to be younger than me.
He's got some Boku no Pico hands.
Shut the fuck up. Get out of here.
Which is odd, but this man seems way more nervous than the other two. And he asks her about UFO sightings, which is odd because, once again, no one has asked about that in the most recent times.
And this is all tying back to the theory that Mothman's possibly an alien, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
This
Okay.
is so if it does turn out to be true, I'm going to tie this into a possible conspiracy that I have not seen but have come up with on my own.
Okay.
Ooh.
So this man is asking her, he seems very nervous. He's stammering and stuttering everything. He's asking about UFO sightings. He's asking if she knows John Keel. And he calls John Keel a liar and saying that he's never seen anything, which seems weird that John Keel put this in his own book, but
Mhm.
whatever. And then he asks,
But John Keel hadn't published that book yet, right?
no, he had not. So this is a report from Mrs. Heyer, who had worked with John Keel through like a lot of UFO sightings and stuff.
Yeah, multiple
Yeah.
UFO tomfoolery.
And so he stops and asks her, has anyone ever told you to stop printing these articles about UFO sightings? And that is taking her aback because no one has ever asked her that before until today. But two people in the same day have asked her now, has anyone asked you to stop reporting these? So we go to, I believe it's only 7 years later, Mrs. Mary Heyer dies in hospital of illness after 4 weeks of suffering. So my belief is that one of these men may actually have been one of the men in black, and she was poisoned because she was only 57 when she died.
Only 57 when she died. Any
Mhm.
priors? Prior conditions at all?
Not that I've read about at all. She apparently had been working at the newspaper for 27 years at that point. So,
Huh. Okay.
yeah.
What about the lead content of the ink? Did she ever come in contact with the ink?
You know, that is a good question. If they had given me anything more specific than she passed of disease, I would pass on it. But because it
mean-
was so deliberately vague.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that isn't the age range that people would be dying a little bit more frequently during that period, or
This
life
is true.
expectancy blew up later in the decades coming. I will admit
That's why
it's
Steven's
a little
still
bit. God damn it! Shut the fuck up. I swear to God. I think that it's hard because she supposedly encountered the Men in Black.
Mhm.
And,
So obviously,
and
it's
the Men in
correlation,
Black
not
are
causation.
yeah. It's the Men in Black have been reported to have affected people with like radiation because of their proximity to space and technology that gave that off. There are claims of that. Like I have no hard proof because I have about as much hard proof as the Men in Black as I
Exactly.
do, as much as I do chupacabras and my anime waifus. So it's neither here nor there. Like it's.
I just
Okay.
like
It's
to add that
interesting.
on because it closes a loop that isn't necessarily left open,
Mhm.
but it makes it a more satisfying conclusion to it. Similar to how like the dream theory for things is it works with everything and it's the most unsatisfying thing in the world.
Okay.
Let's one thing I like. So there's a theory that Ryan, you brought up. There's the theory that it could be ethereal or a divine of some kind. There's the alien theory. There's some people who straight up said there was a bird, as we touched base on. There's some people that said that it also could be a result of some sort of experiment. Like I read somewhere that it could be a result of an experiment that went wrong, or an escaped creature of some kind that they were messing with or caught.
Yeah, that is absolutely a possibility because when you go through the articles from the time, you keep reading about how the researchers at the TNT area are getting pissed off at all these people walking around their area and littering and having guns and climbing on places where unexploded ordnance is stored with loaded guns.
That sounds like a dangerous twister. That's what that sounds like.
It got to the point the police chief said anyone found after dark in the area with a loaded gun is getting arrested.
Wow.
Which, as a non-American, I was like, that's totally reasonable. But I'm like thinking now, I'm like, this is America. That is the most unreasonable thing. God himself gave you all the right to hold those guns.
Yeah, especially in West Virginia.
West
Especially-
Virginia,
Absolutely in West
especially in
Virginia.
West Virginia.
Yeah. So I have to ask you real quick before we go forward: is the rest of the Mothman like information you're about to drop on our fucking noggins from like after?
I have some info about after. It's not a lot to go on because I've been working as well, so trying to get deep into every incident is a little bit rough. But as we are planning on doing a two-parter for this, that does give me a bit of time to go and look into these events and find out more about them.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. He keeps popping up throughout
Exactly.
later history. Germany, Japan,
All over the US.
all over the US, yeah.
Russia is one of the ones I found, which is
Okay.
really weird because it ended up with like 109 people getting killed, and I have never heard of this event before I started doing this research.
So we're down the road going to be leaning heavily into the Omen territory and everything like
Exactly.
that. So I think it would be important to kind of like wrap up from this point on. And like Ryan, like what's your takeaway on this? Like you've been a little quiet over there. You've been contemplative. I don't know what that word is. I just fucked it up.
Yeah. No, I think it's a very I always think there's like that phenomena where somebody reports seeing something and then everybody else went in on the action just so they have their name in an article, right? And so, like I talked about earlier, when the Register put out that first article about those two couples seeing, and then they were like, "Come tell us if you've also seen it." Yeah, there was like 100 people in the small town that were like, "I want to be in the newspaper." Yeah, I saw it too.
This
and
is how I'll
whatever,
get famous.
There's that couple is like, yeah, me and my girlfriend were boning in the woods, and I saw the two big eyes, and he lasered her while we were boning.
Yeah, and then you have like the girl coming home from church and gets caught by her parents with her boyfriend, and she was like, "It's because I saw the Mothman. He made me question everything."
So what's interesting about that one, that girl was Mrs. Heyer's niece.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
Really?
yeah. So there was a direct family relationship to somebody who saw Mothman and allegedly got fucking the sun blasted into her eyes.
So essentially, the Mothman was the Miss Hires excuse that she gave to her niece to explain her sexual awakening to her parents that were not ready for that.
Absolutely.
Like, she was like,
And Miss
"Hey,
Hire is
I got
just a
something."
sweet lady who just believed her and ran with it to protect her niece.
Yep, definitely.
It's possible. It's possible.
To answer your question a little bit more, it's a little better. I do find it odd that there were these sightings prior to a terrible event happening, and then, which we'll talk about in the next episode in our part 2, how that continues to be a trend. And it's not like an event happens, they're like, "Oh, I saw the Mothman yesterday." I mean, it's always like they see it and then something happens after and like report it beforehand. And I don't know, there's just something strange about it. And it's still I'm still of the belief that there's a lot of things in this world we don't fully understand. And I'm not saying like it's an alien, I'm not saying it's a paranormal being, I'm just saying it is a very interesting story when you get into it.
It's interesting to me, I guess, like my wind down on it, like is I'm having a hard time categorizing this thing.
Yeah.
Because like it's easy. Loch Ness Monster, possibly a dinosaur.
It's a plesiosaur.
It's a Leopleurodon, Charlie.
Magical Leopleurodon.
You can categorize that as just kind of a big monster. Ghosts. Mothman, like, okay, is an alien? Is it Stephen? You mentioned like, is it a tulpa? Stephen, you mentioned it like this omen category. So I like, my head is like honestly going to some like force of nature almost, if anything.
There are other explanations that I could get into in part 2 as well that I've heard. But one thing I want to do is, if you live in Chicago, good luck, because there's been 160 sightings since 2011.
Yep.
So yeah,
that's the most recent one.
Yeah, there was one February 5th in Chicago. So good luck, Chicago. Hopefully you I don't know.
Stay off the bridges.
Exactly.
Natural disasters in Chicago.
Yeah.
So I actually, my wind down on this is it's actually less omen as it is just if I had to guess anything, it would be costuming from Secret Society. So
Okay.
look, I know that sounds insane. Okay, I'm gonna explain myself a little bit
So
here.
we're going
okay?
like Illuminati here.
I don't think it's quite nearly the level of Illuminati. I would say it's more along the lines of stonemasons. It's an okay. Stonemasons are much more like I guess publicly facing, but that doesn't mean that there isn't other organizations that take part in this sort of thing, and they can be made up of a group of people that might be concerned about something. Like so, a perfect example of this is like we'll talk more about this next time, but is supposedly it's an omen before something bad happens. What if it's just humans being informed about what could happen, and they're part of the society and they're dressed up and they have meetings and ceremonies and people happen to stumble across these that's the thing. It's like, is this in a populated area or is it primarily in a rural situation? Where would those kinds of people meet? They would meet in a place where most people don't really hang out. So only one or two people would really encounter them in their costumes. I know this sounds really out there, but good God, I mean, there's enough people that do cosplay, fursuits and things like that. It's not out of the ordinary for that to happen, especially in the 1960s.
In the 1960s, anyway, like
what?
Fuck with the poor and pretend to be giant insects.
Steven went from Secret Society Illuminati to blame the furries real quick.
No, I did not.
God!
Why do you guys
I'm looking at you.
You're perpetuating this thing that I don't like furries. I fucking love furries.
Chaos Included TV has no problem with the furry community. In fact, we love you guys.
Some of my best friends are furries. I can say it.
You fuckers keep making me out to be like this.
We've done this even before you joined the show.
I know. You guys did this for fun without the idea that I was on camera to be present for it.
And you're a really good sport.
I appreciate it.
Anyway, I think like a good thing to take away from it is that's part of the whole thing that we just don't know what it is. Like with any paranormal thing, but this one's just so broad and it has like this different air of mystery to it that that's what makes it fun to speculate and theorize on what it could be.
Yeah, I think that'll be a big part of the second part of this as well is going into some rumors and thoughts into what it actually is a little bit deeper than what we just did.
Yeah.
This is like surface level origin story. This is Batman Begins, and next time we're going to go into the Dark Knight.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
a good one.
That sounds great.
All right, so that will be the end of part one of Mothman. I want to thank Ryan and Bonsai for being here, and I especially want to thank Cryptid for taking time out of your night to come and talk Mothman with us and putting up with us, I guess.
Absolutely.
It's like Chaos Included TV. Come on over so we can make fun of your passion.
That is okay. At least you're not Rukov, who has a quote on like 3 different channels now that is just Mothman is bullshit. Cryptid 2022.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I was quoting Dream Daddy from yours and Logan's playthrough.
Oh my gosh, that's right. I remember that. You can watch that playthrough right here.
Oh my God.
I'm kidding.
Plug.
All right.
He's
guys.
like, not really.
All right, thanks for joining us, guys. Once again, be sure to check out our merch. Links down below in the description. Please buy our merch. It's the best way to support the channel. If you love the show, please tell all your friends. Like, comment, and subscribe. Do everything you can to blast us out there. If you hated the show, keep your mouth shut. Now, that being said...
Share it with your enemies.
Share it with your enemies. I don't give a shit. I would like to thank my host, Ryan. Thank you so much. Bonsai, thank you so much. Cryptid, thank you so much. And we'll catch you guys next time.
Bye.
Later.